Hello everyone, today I'll be reviewing Rebel Without a Cause. So Rebel Without a Cause came out in 1955 and was directed by Nicholas Ray, and this film stars James Dean and Natalie Wood. So in this film, James Dean, he plays a teenager called Jim Stark, and Jim is starting a brand new school, and when he joins the school he finds it very difficult to get along with some of the other kids, and he has a real conflict with this other kid known as Buzz. But he does also make friends with this guy known as Plato, and Plato is a more lonely kid who also finds it hard to communicate with people. And at the same time as all this is going on, Jim also takes a liking to Judy, who is played by Natalie Wood. So this was actually the second time that I had seen this film. The first time I'd seen it though was quite a while ago, possibly about 9 or 10 years ago. So I knew what to expect because it was a film that I could remember very well, as this is a very iconic film. Now James Dean, he was only in 3 films, and of the 3 films this is actually often recognised as his most iconic film and his most iconic film role. Because, you know, just looking at that Blu-ray case behind me, he has a look, he has the white t-shirt, the jeans, and that very famous red jacket. And he certainly looks the part in this film as that rebellious youth icon. And what is interesting is that of the 3 films that James Dean was in, this was the only one where he wasn't actually nominated for a Best Actor Oscar. So throughout this film we follow Jim Stark and his journey as he tries to get along through school with all these different characters, and he ends up really struggling. But one of the more interesting scenes in the film is really the rivalry between Buzz and Jim Stark, and there is this excellent scene where Jim and Buzz, they do something known as a chickie run, which is basically where they have these cars on top of this cliff, and they have to drive towards the edge of the cliff as fast as they can, and the first one to jump out is a chicken. Now, this scene is a very important scene in the film because it's really the moment in the film where something really starts to go wrong. So I'm not going to say exactly what happens, but let's just say something doesn't go according to plan. And from then on, Jim is constantly in danger. He is in threat from these other guys who are chasing after him, and he's almost a bit sort of on the run, and he goes on the run with Judy and Plato. What is interesting actually is that the 3 main characters, Jim Stark, Judy and Plato, these are the 3 main characters in the film, and that they already give proper solid individual performances. It's really nice to see Natalie Wood in this film. This was actually her first role, not as a child star, because she was previously in other films as a child, and this was her big performance role as an adult. And she plays a very likeable character, though at the start of the film she tends to really blend in with Buzz and his friends, and then she moves over to get along much better with Jim. So her character really changes throughout the film. Though I must say one of the more interesting characters is actually Plato, who is played by Mineo, because his character is very isolated. He's very much on his own, and we get this excellent scene at the start where they're in the planetarium and Jim is trying to look cool in front of all the other kids, and he fails miserably, unfortunately. And then there's Plato sort of telling him, you know, you're not going to impress these guys are very hard to make friends with. So Plato represents somebody who knows what is going on in this area, which is probably why he gets on so very well with Jim. But Plato's very isolated, and he feels this connection with Jim, which we see develop throughout the film. So I think the reason this is such an iconic film is, not only because of James Dean's raw and emotional performance, but also because of the time it takes place. So this was in the 1950s in America. It was a time where you had lots of these rebellious type films. We had the Wild One with Marlon Brando, and unfortunately, obviously, James Dean passed away the same year that this film was released, so he never actually got to see it be released in theatres, and that really cemented his status as an iconic star. Sadly, actually, all 3 of the main leads in this film, so including Natalie Wood and Mineo, they also died young as well. Natalie Wood died in a mysterious drowning accident and Sal Mineo died of a stabbing murder. So very tragic circumstances for all three leads in this film. But nevertheless, moving past that, this is certainly an interesting film. I think it's a very good coming of age film, and I think it's something that even today, although obviously some aspects of the film are dated, it came out in 1955, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, that struggle for conformity, the inability to fit in, the expression of identity is, I suppose, what I see this film as about. And James Dean really represents that type of character so well. It's amazing the range that James Dean has in terms of his acting ability, as there's one iconic scene during the start where he says, "You're tearing me apart." And he actually does it very well. It almost comes out of nowhere, but at the same time it makes sense in the context of the scene, because Jim Stark he has a mother and father, but his relationship with his father is very interesting because his father almost represents a very emasculated type of man who sort of gets pushed around by his wife quite a lot. We actually see him in one quite funny scene where he's wearing a flowery apron and sort of like picking up some stuff on the floor, and he never really stands up for Jim in this film. He's always just sort of there, not being particularly helpful, and I suppose Jim almost wants him to be a good male role model for him, but in lots of ways unfortunately he's not. So this is probably one of the reasons why Jim as a character is struggling so much throughout this film. So overall, as you can probably tell, I enjoyed this film very much. I also must say I like the look of this film. It's filmed in CinemaScope, although I do have to admit I did think that the Blu-ray version of it, which I have behind me, it didn't look particularly high definition. There were quite a few scenes which, looked probably just as good as on a DVD version. Then again, nevertheless, can't complain too much as I enjoyed the film. So Rebel Without a Cause is a film I would recommend for most people. I think it's an excellent coming of age film. Do be aware, obviously it has dated in some ways because of its age, but nevertheless an excellent film. I'm actually going to give Rebel Without a Cause a rating of 10 out of 10. I think it tells an excellent story, fantastic acting, fantastic story, and it is James Dean's most iconic performance and most iconic role. So there we go. So that is my review of Rebel Without a Cause. So what do you guys think? Have you seen Rebel Without a Cause? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Please let me know down in the comment section below. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.